good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Saturday, 10th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. The United States is currently engaged in trade negotiations with China in Geneva, spearheaded by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, with the aim of resolving persistent tariff dispute. President Trump has confidently stated that winning a trade war with China should be straightforward, and has suggested imposing a substantial 100% tariff on foreign-made film. A preliminary trade deal has also been reached with Britain. There are anxieties that the president's trade policies might destabilize global debt and adversely affect emerging economies. Possible outcomes from the U.S.-China discussions are varied, ranging from a limited agreement to a complete collapse. The Trump administration argues that tariffs are intended to stimulate U.S. manufacturing, reflecting a larger ambition for increased factory employment. In other business news, Expedia Group reported lower than anticipated first-quarter revenue, citing reduced demand for U.S. travel. Furthermore, a U.S. judge has temporarily halted a land exchange related to a proposed copper mine by Rio Tinto and BHP, which is facing resistance from Native American groups. Turning to China, the country is actively participating in trade talks with the U.S. in Geneva, with the stability of the global economy potentially at stake. Analysts foresee a broad spectrum of results from this initial round of dialogue, varying from a limited agreement to a contentious breakdown in negotiations. Economists suggest that mutual trust between Washington and Beijing has weakened significantly. However, a complete severing of ties remains improbable. Globally, the dollar continues to be the world's dominant financial currency, used by central banks for wealth storage and facilitating about 90% of all foreign exchange transactions. Crude oil prices have experienced their first weekly increase since mid-April, supported by the ongoing U.S.-China trade talks, with Brent crude at $63 and WTI showing a 4% gain over 5 days. U.S. yields have remained fairly stable as the China trade talks unfold. Finally, in Australia, the Finder is exiting the cryptocurrency market, supporting users in their transition to the Australian exchange SWIFTs. India's economic outlook is brightened by Morningstar. DBR is upgrading its sovereign credit rating to BBB, signaling strong economic performance. Piyush Goyal anticipates the India-UK Free Trade Agreement, FTA, will stimulate expansion across multiple industries. MEX gold rates climbed more than 4% last week, settling at 96,535 per 10 grams, fueled by the weakening Indian rupee and demand for safe haven assets amid global economic instability. Conversely, the Indian stock market saw significant sell-offs due to heightened India-Pakistan tensions, wiping out $83 billion from Indian equities in 2 days. Defense stocks, including HAL, Bell, and Mazagon Dock, bucked the trend, gaining value amid the geopolitical unrest. The IPO market is encountering challenges, with Ather Energy's debut faltering and Swiggy reporting significant losses in quick commerce. The India regulator has finalized norms to not limit traders' intraday derivatives positions. Responding to rising Indo-Pak tensions, India's major stock exchanges issued a cybersecurity alert. Market participants are also uncertain about stock trading on Monday due to Buddha Purnima 2025. The heightened tensions between India and Pakistan involve strikes and counterstrikes targeting military sites on Saturday, resulting in tightened security and economic consequences. This conflict has contributed to sell-off pressure in the Indian stock market and prompted urgent cybersecurity measures from India's leading stock exchanges. Pakistan is poised to receive a $2.30 billion loan from the IMF. India abstained from the vote expressing worries about tariff financing. China is engaged in trade talks with the U.S. in Geneva, Switzerland, where Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met with officials to seek a path to de-escalate trade tensions as both countries face economic challenges from tariffs. Hainan, a tropical island in southern China, leverages special customs policies to keep prices low. Despite high tariffs, several companies are recalling nearly 70,000 BMW, Toyota, and Mercedes-Benz vehicles due to safety concerns, heightened by a recent Xiaomi EV accident. Tesla's sales in China are experiencing a decline, with Giga Shanghai reporting its 7th consecutive month of slumping sales, reaching new lows. Alibaba's Quark, a popular AI app, introduced a deep search feature, integrating AI reasoning with online searches to address intricate user queries. Chinese and Saudi Arabian firms have also signed agreements in advanced manufacturing, signaling increased cooperation between the two nations. Turning to the United States, the U.S. is actively involved in trade talks with China in Geneva, Switzerland, led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, aiming to de-escalate trade tensions given the growing economic impact of tariffs. President Trump has suggested the possibility of reducing tariff rates on Chinese goods. Wall Street analysts foresee a potential increase in the share value of SharkNinja, a consumer products company relocating from China, indicating a positive outlook for the company's future performance. United Kingdom. Steel producers are celebrating the removal of a 25% duty on steel exports to the United States. However, U.S. automakers are voicing concerns over a new trade deal. They claim British automakers like Jaguar Land Rover gain an unfair advantage. The deal permits these companies to export up to 100,000 vehicles annually to the U.S., with significantly lower tariffs than Mexico and Canada. In other economic news, British Airways parent company, IAG, reported a rise in first quarter operating profit. They also announced a $13 billion order for 32 Boeing aircraft, shortly after the trade framework with the United States was confirmed. Turning to China, their exports to Southeast Asia have seen a significant surge. This stands in stark contrast to a 21% drop in shipments to the United States in April. This decline followed the imposition of substantial tariffs by President Trump on Chinese goods. Saudi Arabia is currently engaged in significant economic and diplomatic endeavors. The kingdom aims to secure considerable investment agreements with the United States, attracting prominent figures such as Donald Trump, along with CEOs from BlackRock and Citi. Simultaneously, Saudi companies are establishing partnerships with Chinese counterparts in the realm of advanced manufacturing, highlighting increasing cooperation between the two nations. Approximately half of Saudi Arabia's hospitality sector is now owned by women, signaling a notable change in the country's economic dynamic. Shifting to regional diplomacy, a Saudi minister recently traveled to Islamabad during a period of heightened tensions between India and Pakistan, a visit that followed a trip to New Delhi. Saudi Arabia has also invited leaders from the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, to attend a Gulf summit in Riyadh. Moreover, Iran's leading diplomat is slated to visit Saudi Arabia and Qatar, preceding a tour planned by Donald Trump. United States analysts anticipate that other nations and trade organizations may only obtain a minimum tariff rate of 10% in forthcoming trade agreements with the U.S. Turning to Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared that the country will host a gathering of leaders from the Coalition of the Willing this Saturday. Concurrently, Ukraine announced the discovery of a spy ring within its borders amidst the continuing conflict. Meanwhile, in Russia, President Vladimir Putin greeted Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow for the Victory Day parade, which commemorates the Soviet Union's victory against Nazi Germany. In World War II, this event unfolds as the war in Ukraine persists. Shifting focus to the United Kingdom, IFRX is exploring a potential listing on the London Stock Exchange as a strategy to bolster company expansion. Russia's declared truce is being undermined by continuous fighting, with both Moscow and Kyiv accusing each other of initiating the conflict. Finance Minister Anton Siluanov revealed the government's intention to tap into fiscal reserves to stabilize the budget for 2025. During Russia's elaborate World War II Victory Day parade, President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping affirmed their commitment to deepening the partnership between their nations, marking the 80th anniversary of the Nazi defeat. The Kremlin has acknowledged ongoing discussions between Russia and the United States concerning the flow of Russian gas to European countries. Turning to Slovakia, Prime Minister Robert Fico's recent trip to Moscow to meet with President Putin has sparked widespread condemnation from presses within the country. In Ukraine, despite ongoing conflict, efforts are underway to maintain essential services and infrastructure. The government continues to appeal for international aid to bolster its defense capabilities and humanitarian efforts. Allegations of Russian interference in Ukrainian affairs persist, exacerbating tensions between the two nations. Japan is undergoing significant economic shifts, with Panasonic planning to lay off 10,000 workers to restructure and focus on growth sectors. In finance, Sumitomo and SMBC are making substantial investments in India's Yes Bank, with SMBC acquiring a 20% stake and SBI selling a 13.19% stake to them. Sumitomo will also acquire a 20% stake in Yes Bank for about Rs 483 crore. Meanwhile, the Nikkei 225 index saw a robust recovery, increasing by 0.95% in May 25. While the former retired emperor of Japan, will be hospitalized for cardiac evaluations. Pakistan is seeing a boost as the International Monetary Fund approved a $1 billion payment. Despite India's objections, this financial injection has led to a surge in Pakistan's stock market, reflecting increased investor confidence. Adding to the positive economic outlook, remittances to Pakistan have reached a record $31.20 billion in the current fiscal year, primarily fueled by inflows from Saudi Arabia. Despite these economic gains, tensions between Pakistan and India remain a significant concern. Pakistan has stated it will not de-escalate the conflict, highlighting the ongoing geopolitical challenges. Pakistan's Prime Minister has openly condemned recent Indian strikes that allegedly targeted civilians. The Prime Minister also commended Saudi Arabia for its diplomatic efforts aimed at de-escalating the tensions between the two nations, underscoring the complex interplay of regional politics and international relations. Germany saw its DAX reach a record high as European stocks closed higher, fueled by anticipation of US-China trade talks in Switzerland. The country's new finance minister voiced support for Commerzbank's independence. Furthermore, German authorities took down the X crypto platform, seizing €34 million connected to the Bybit hack and darknet money laundering. Taiwan's semiconductor industry is booming, evidenced by TSMC's impressive 22.2% revenue jump in April, fueled by global demand. As digital currencies gain traction, a Taiwan lawmaker has proposed the novel idea of establishing a national Bitcoin reserve. Responding proactively to international trade dynamics, the government has also unveiled a special budget designed to mitigate the effects of global tariffs. Demonstrating excellence in craftsmanship, Taiwan proudly took home 6 gold medals at the prestigious Concours Lepin. South Africa's rand saw volatility, dipping following lower inflation data, but holding steady amid US-China trade discussion. Uber is testing a two-wheeler service in South Africa, broadening its transport options there. Epson is boosting its South African investments, acknowledging the evolving print landscape. Google continues to lead the search engine market in South Africa. The United States may soon ease trade tensions with China, as President Trump has signaled potential tariff reductions on Chinese goods ahead of crucial trade discussions set to occur in Switzerland. Speaking of Switzerland, the nation is also strengthening its economic ties with the United States, with both countries agreeing to accelerate ongoing trade negotiations aimed at fostering increased commerce. The United States faces ongoing trade complexities as businesses like Randy Cars navigate fluctuating tariffs. These changes complicate adherence to the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, trade regulations. Meanwhile, in Mexico, the USMCA is viewed as a positive force. Mexico's finance chief credits exports protected under the USMCA with boosting the nation's economic growth. Chinese companies are increasingly relocating manufacturing to Vietnam to circumvent U.S. tariffs, a trend that intensified during Trump's initial term. The relocation aims to avoid prohibitive tariffs on Chinese exports, reflecting a shift in global manufacturing strategies. Turning to Canada, the TEX has extended its weekly winning streak, driven by rising commodity prices. Recent economic data from Canada indicates that 7,400 jobs were added, but the unemployment rate also increased to 6.9%. Canadian stocks closed higher overall, with the S&P/TSX Composite Index up by 0.41%. Shifting to Sweden, nearly 70% of the country's land area is covered by forests, with half of this forest land owned by the private sector. This significant private ownership impacts Sweden's economic and environmental policies. In South Korea, Re.Pay is expanding its operations with crypto-powered payment cards. Furthermore, South Korean construction firms are forming consortiums to manage rising costs and navigate the current market downturn. Recent developments in the United Arab Emirates include plans for the Eid holiday, the upcoming launch of Disney in Abu Dhabi, and record real estate investment in Dubai. Simultaneously, Oman is implementing new job regulations. In Uganda, a female entrepreneur is working to establish a coffee sisterhood to promote greater participation of women in the coffee industry. This initiative aims to empower women within Uganda's agricultural sector. Ghana's debt burden is projected to decrease significantly due to economic expansion. S&P has upgraded Ghana's credit rating to CCC following the implementation of spending cut plan. Kenya is making strides in digital finance with the introduction of tokenization. Additionally, Marula Mining has completed the wet commissioning of its plant in Kenya. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of Slovakia has publicly criticized EU attempts to prevent him from attending war commemoration events in Moscow. This reflects ongoing tensions between Slovakia and the EU. Malaysia has extended the term of its anti-graft chief by 1 year. Poland is preparing to initiate discussions with France regarding a potential nuclear shield treaty. Bulgaria's IBEX has launched a market for guarantees of origin, marking a significant development in the country's energy sector. Finally, Brazilian airline Gol has experienced a record low in its stock value, following a proposal for capital increase. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.